What's up, everybody? This is the Tied to the Land podcast, where we believe that everybody is tied to the land in some way, shape, or form. On this podcast, we'll explore the intimate connection that people feel with the land beneath their feet, while telling the stories of folks whose lives have been impacted by their roots to the rural lifestyle. This podcast is brought to you by Arrowhead Land Company, where their mission is to create, inspire, or advance a connection to the land in every person throughout the world. What's up, everybody? My name's Andrew Schultz, and this is the Tied to the Land podcast. We've got Josh Candelaria with us today. How's it going, Josh?
Good, man. I'm good.
Thanks for having me. Come all the way from Gotebo, Oklahoma.
Gotebo, America.
Gotebo, America. I like it. We just talked with David Tomian on the last podcast, and he talked about moving from California to America. And so you're in Gotebo, America. I like that. Anyway, man, I'm excited about today. Want to get into this here. But first, if you don't mind, the toughest interview question that anybody ever has to answer, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody about yourself?
Well, like you said, I'm currently residing in Gotebo, Oklahoma. If you're from Oklahoma, you've probably heard Gotebo, but not very many people can tell you where it's at on the map. But anyway, I've been there. First, Josh Candelaria, Candelaria. It's just I'm used to doing that. When I say my last name, I start spelling it because nobody knows how to spell it. I'm originally from New Mexico, so born and raised in kind of south central New Mexico. Went to college in New Mexico State University and moved out here in 2006, I believe, to Oklahoma. Then been here ever since, and how I ended up in Gotebo is when I moved to Oklahoma, I was actually stationed in Ouachita County for my job, and so I kind of just relocated to the center of the county, kind of looked up Ouachita County. Never been to Oklahoma, so I just looked up Ouachita County and saw where the county seat was, and I looked for a house there and moved there, and was there for a short time, and met my wife. Now my wife. And
you met her in Gotebo?
No, I actually met her. She's gonna be pissed when I tell this story because it kind of dates us a little bit. But we actually met on MySpace. If y'all remember MySpace, those MySpace days, we were chatting online, and I was in Cordell, and she is from the Mountain View Gotebo area, and so when we were talking, we're like, oh, you're like 10 miles away, 15 miles away. So anyway, we hooked up for a date and went and hung out and just hit it off, and everything went good. And like I said, she's originally from that area. And then so her dad passed away, and we kind of took over the family farm and the house and remodeled it and kind of made it our current home now. So that's how I ended up in Gotebo. Technically, Gotebo address, but I live just out in the middle of nowhere, which Gotebo's in the middle of nowhere anyway. It's just a wide spot in the road, but we live north of town. I say town, but it's just outside of town. So anyway.
Did you put her in your top 8 on MySpace?
She quickly made it there. She got there quickly. She wasn't, like I said, it was just a random connection on there. I don't even remember how it worked. I don't know if she liked one of my favorite songs that I had on there or something, but
yeah. So for those of you listening, our younger crowd, MySpace was Facebook before Facebook was Facebook, and so that was like the OG social networking platform. So all of us older folk, which I guess I'm in that crowd since I had MySpace. Man, I always had the best songs on my profile.
I liked it because you could, everybody knew what you were into song-wise, and it was there. Everybody knew it, and like you picked your favorite friends, and you had to rank your friends. It was pretty savage.
I think Facebook should bring back like having a song as a theme.
I do too, and then you could decorate your whole page and like decorate the background. Like I thought it was cool, but didn't last very long. Facebook kind of just steamrolled that right out of the way.
Yeah, it did. What do you think Tom's up to these days?
I don't know.
Tom, the founder of MySpace.
I bet he's on a beach somewhere. I think he did all right with that.
We'll have to dig into that
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, anyway, yeah. Back to kind of how I got here. That's how I got here. I took a job in 2006 with the Department of Agriculture. I graduated with a wildlife science degree from New Mexico State, and then while I was in school, my last couple of years of college, I actually interned with the Department of Ag, and part of the internship was, they provided some job placement opportunities once I graduated. And so I got all that done, graduated, had my, wildlife biology degree and all that. And then the first job that they offered, they gave me like 2 or 3. And I opened up the first one, and it said, aerial crew member, Oklahoma Wildlife Services. And then it had a description of what that job was. I was like, dude, I'm on this. And he's like, well, you think you'd be interested? And I said, yeah. So he's like, well, I'll set up the interview or whatever. So anyway, so I had no idea what it was going to entail really, other than what the little description said. So I did my interview. During the interview, and if you don't know, why Oklahoma or Wildlife Services is a branch under the USDA, Department of Agriculture's Wildlife Services. It's kind of just one of those not more well-known branches of the Department of Ag, but it's actually a federal program under the Department of Agriculture. And a lot of what they do is provide, help for farmers and ranchers that are having issues with any kind of wildlife. I mean, here in Oklahoma, it's nationwide, so every state varies, but here in Oklahoma, that's your coyotes with cattle and calves and stuff like that. And then the majority of what I do is, now we'll get into that, is the feral hogs. That's kind of the big deal. So when I interviewed for the position, they kind of told me a little bit about it, and it's like I said, it was an aerial crew member, which I had no idea what that really was. Well, I got into it, and they told me that it's you're going to be doing aerial removal of coyotes. That is what it was at the time, because we honestly didn't have that many hogs in Oklahoma. That was 20 years ago. So hogs weren't a huge deal at the time, but it was coyotes, and it was with a fixed wing Super Cub airplane. And it's like, hell yeah, that's I can do that. So part of the deal was like, okay, you don't get air sick? And I was like, no, I don't get air sick. And you have experience with low level and fixed wing aircraft. Yeah, everything, was good. Anyway, get the job. I lied my ass off. I didn't have, I had never even been in a commercial airplane before, much less a small 2-seat fixed wing aircraft, and I had no clue if I got airsick or not, because I'd never been in the air. So I wasn't lying about that. I've never been airsick. But anyway, so I got the job, and just kind of hit the ground running. Like literally just the first weekend, I was in, at our training center in the back seat of a Super Cub airplane, learning how to shoot a shotgun out of a 12 by 20 window out the left side of a airplane going 80 miles an hour. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was cool, but it was completely foreign to me. But it kind of just one of those, I don't know, I don't even know how you call it. It worked out. Like I turned out to be good at it, and I enjoyed it, and I didn't get air sick. So it was kind of I had everything it took to make a good aerial gunner, but I didn't know it at the time. It was.
So when you got into it, were you like, oh my gosh, this is a dream job?
Oh yeah, and not only me, but everybody else that I told about it, they were like, I can't believe you get paid to shoot stuff out the side of an airplane. I was like, yeah, I do. I can't believe it either. I mean, it wasn't the thing about any kind of the wildlife field, or in general, is like you don't get into those fields for the money. Like the money's not, you're not going to get rich doing it, but it's one of those jobs that, like, you wake up every morning and you don't feel like you're going to a job. Like you feel like you're going to go play, like you're going to go. It's just like how you feel when you get up to go hunting every morning. It's like I had never had a problem waking up and going to work, because it was, it entailed crawling into the back seat of a plane and going and flying somebody's, awesome ranch in some part of Oklahoma and shooting coyotes. That's not a job to me. That's fun.
Dude, that's awesome. So I'd asked you one time, and I made you count up how many coyotes and or
Oh
hogs
gosh.
have likely died to your trigger finger over the years.
I kind of thought that you might ask this. So I should have looked it up last night because I can go back and because everything we do is input it in a computer program so we can kind of keep track of all that stuff and it's a lot. It's I don't know, man.
Take a stab at it.
It's more than anybody you know combined, but I would say because on average because I did the fixed wing airplane for like exclusively for 15 years. Like here now lately I've things have kind of changed in my duties and stuff, so I've kind of given up a lot of the fixed wing stuff and picked up more strictly helicopter stuff, and then I didn't start doing helicopter stuff till I was probably 10 years in, maybe a little less than that. So I've got, and we would average, close to 300 hours a year in the fixed wing. So if you do, 15 years times 300 hours, that's a lot of backseat time. Like I have more aerial time, more hours in an airplane than anybody you probably know that doesn't know how to fly or doesn't have their pilot's license, But I would say it's in the it's a 5-digit number easily, It's in
Wow.
it's in the upper 5 digits. It's a lot. I don't know. Coyotes is several thousand, and hogs is even more than that. So it's,
Man. So when did you start to see the hogs becoming a problem in Oklahoma then?
and I think they were a problem in certain parts of Oklahoma when I got here, but in the counties that I was assigned to, I didn't have very many hogs. Like, because I was technically stationed in Washita, and then I picked up Kiowa, which is directly south of Washita. I picked up that county a little bit later on. But when I first got here, I don't think I worked a hog complaint until a few years in for sure. Just here and there, but nothing like it is now. I would say within the last 10 years is whenever our whole our focus has shifted as a whole agency from. Because for those that don't know, Wildlife Services has been around for over 100 years. Like it was there. It was put in place way back in the days strictly for coyote management for farmers or for ranchers that were having trouble with coyotes. That's how the whole program came about, and that's what we did for all these years was, and we do other species too, beavers and raccoons and any kind of human wildlife conflict is kind of what we deal with, but. It was almost strictly coyotes for a long time, and then now, I would say when I first started, it was probably in my area, and probably as a state, it was probably 70-30, 70% coyote work, 30% hogs and other stuff. Now it's probably completely flipped. It's probably 70% hogs and 30% coyotes and other stuff. It's just been a complete 180 of what our whole focus as an agency's gone to, and kind of what carries the agency now is the hogs, just because it's I don't even care who or what animal rights. You don't ever hear animal rights people trying to advocate for wild hogs. That's like the one species that even they don't like they don't even care about it. It's a non-native introduced, just very invasive species. So it's it's real easy to work on those with they don't have nobody trying to help them.
So give us the play-by-play of like what a day looks like. Like I picture almost like Top Gun, like you're getting suited up and you're walking to the plane and, you've got your weapon of choice or whatever. And, somebody's driving the plane, of course, there's a pilot.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that you ever do both, drive the plane and shoot. But like, give us a better idea. You said it's super fulfilled. You don't feel like you're working, but like, what does a day look like? Say you've got a jam-packed day of being in the plane from start to finish. What does that look like?
Well, we have some parameters that we have to stay within as far as the amount of of hunt time we can actually do in a day, which is, I think it's like 6 hours or something. We can actually hunt, actually be in the airplane or helicopter and hunt. So there's, on a max, that's what it is. Back when I first started, I think they were there, but we just kind of did whatever. But a typical day is, my alarm will go off and it's, highway to the danger zone on my ringtone, like comes on like the Top Gun song. No, that doesn't happen. But
I was about to say, really?
No. We do play it in the airplane though, every once in a
awesome.
while. But no, the way it kind of works is, farmers and ranchers, they have issues with coyotes, or let's just say coyotes, just for sake of conversation. So they call their local trapper, local wildlife specialist. Every county's got somebody assigned to it that works with the same outfit that I do, and they call their local guy, and they have a trouble. I lost a couple of calves, or whatever the case may be. So that guy either tries to take care of the problem himself, or if it's an issue where he feels that like the airplane, we're just a tool, we're just another tool. So if he feels like the airplane or the helicopter would be easier, quicker, faster, whatever it may be, he calls us and be like, hey, I think I got a place over here, I'm having trouble with coyotes, and can y'all get up here? So, and usually they call the pilot, and his name's Brent. We call him Tater. Me and him actually got hired. We were actually the very first duo that they've ever, that all of Wildlife Services really ever hired as a tandem, like as a team. Like we were like the guinea pigs of, we're going to try to hire a pilot gunner tandem, and just strictly these two guys work together. Usually before, it was like the Wild West. Like we had pilots, the field guy, the trapper would field the calls, and the airplane would land in a field. That guy would jump in the plane, and they would just go shoot, and it's real dangerous. And if somebody don't know what they're doing, and you got all these random guys in there shooting, it was just not a good setup. So they tried to move towards this is strictly what he does. This pilot is strictly with this gunner. So we were the first team, I guess you could say. So they'll call him. He'll set it all up. We'll be there, whatever. So sometimes that entails, like, there's one airplane that covers the whole state of Oklahoma. So, we might be in Bartlesville one week, or we might be in Ardmore the next week, or we might be in, up in the Panhandle the next week, and it just depends. Like if it's up in the Panhandle, we'll go stay there overnight. And then the next day we go just wake up and get the airplane prepped and make sure I got plenty of ammo, and we go to work. We have a certain ranch or bunch of ranches that we have signed up, or that the field guy has in mind or signed up for us to go work, and we go work, where he thinks we're going to do the most good, and it's a shoot on sight deal. We see them and get rid of them.
That's awesome. So I want to break that down further for the landowners that are listening. What is the process? Does a landowner make a phone call and then that puts it in action? Are there certain criteria they have to meet? Do they have to pay anything for these services? For those folks listening that own land, if they have a problem and they want to lean on you guys for assistance, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's very easy. It's totally free public service provided by the federal and state governments. And it's different from state to state, because I did work in New Mexico and I did some work in North Dakota before I moved here. And like in New Mexico, you had to pay, like if you were going to call in an airplane, like the landowners would pull up some money, and it was a certain amount per hour to do it. So the landowners would all pull up and basically buy some hours, buy some time, and then you'd go hunt their ranch and do it that way. Here in Oklahoma, it's totally funded by the government. So the way it works is the landowner, if he's having trouble with hogs or coyotes or even beavers or stuff like that, you just reach out and try to get a hold of your local. Like I said, there's a trapper. We say trapper. They're field specialists or wildlife specialists assigned to every county in the state. It's usually like one specialist to every 2 or 3 counties. And you get a hold of them, and that's basically it. You call them, you get a hold of them, you talk to them, tell them what your problem is. We're usually out there in a pretty pretty short order and kind of evaluate the situation. And we got a lot of good guys that they know what they're doing and kind of take it from there. And that's, like I said, it's as easy as that. You just call, pick up the phone. The hardest part is figuring out who your guy is, for each county. But we even have a director. You just go to, you can call our federal office, or our state office, is in Oklahoma City, and you call up there and you tell them what county you're in. They'll give you the guy's number, and it's as simple as getting a hold of him and letting him go from there. And it doesn't matter if it's setting a trap or calling in an airplane or calling in a helicopter. It's all, the landowner doesn't pay a dime. It's tax funded,
Wow,
it's all
that's cool.
Tax dollars.
So do you all give a report to the landowner then about everything that took place or what you were able to harvest?
Usually, because they want to know, obviously. They're like, hey, what'd you get? How many did you get? It's always the first thing they want to know. First and foremost, they want to know if it's a coyote deal or if it's a hog deal, did you get my problem taken care of? Did you, because the reason they're calling out is because it's costing them money. It's
Sure.
If it's on the hog side of things, they're tearing up crops or tearing up pasture or something, and it's costing them a lot of money. And if it's coyotes, cattle market's about as hot as it's been in a long time, and if somebody loses a calf, it's a big deal. So you got to get in there and shut it down pretty quick. And that's the first thing they want to know is how many did you get, and do you think you solved the problem? And you always hope you solve the problem, and then they want to know the numbers, like how many did you get, and sometimes it's astronomical, and sometimes it's just one or two. But if you got the right one or two, then you did just as good killing two as you did killing 100. If you kill 100 but you didn't get the right one, then you didn't solve the problem. So
what's the strategy when you're up in the air and you're trying to flush these animals out? You have an idea of where to look, or is it the sound of the plane and or helicopter that typically will flush them out? What's the strategy for finding these animals? Because we walk farms all the time, right? And sometimes you stumble into hogs, but like very rarely are you going to just walk up on a coyote. And so how do you do that?
Well, you lean on the like I said, we got a lot of good guys that have been on a long time, the field specialists, and if it's not my county that I'm actually assigned to that I know, or my area that I really know, then we just lean on the guys, and they tell us, and they're, like I said, they're really good, and we'll be in the air and we're communicating through radios, and most of the time they're like, hey, I've been tracking them out of that pasture into here. They're probably going to be, in this little patch of trees or on this little creek bottom, and most of the time they are. They're really good at what they do, and in most, some cases it's not all. Wildlife's just like hunting. Sometimes they do what they're supposed to do, and sometimes they don't. So we have to hunt them up, and like you said, have to flush them out sometimes. And the guys on the ground will have dogs. They'll use dogs, and if we can kind of get a general idea, or if we get a spot on them and can see them, but we can't shoot at them if they're in a big wooded draw or something. We're not much use in an airplane, so we'll tell the guys where they're at, and they run the dogs out, and a lot of times they can run them out in the open for us. Or when it comes to hogs, they're two different completely animals, two different beasts. The airplane and the helicopter are completely different, like 100% different. And you can do a lot of things in a helicopter that you can't do in an airplane. There's things you can do in an airplane you can't do in a helicopter, so they're really not comparable. Shooting out of either one's not comparable. Like, they're both 100% different.
So what are the differences if you had to describe them?
For one, as far as shooting goes, anybody can jump in a helicopter and get some stuff killed and do pretty good. It's really not that hard. A lot of times it's not any different than shooting a stationary target if you think about it, because you're basically matching them speed for speed. Whatever speed the hog's going or the coyote, you're kind of able to match them with a helicopter. So it's not, in reality, it's not much different than shooting a stationary target. In the airplane, you're making passes basically, where it's if you ever think of like the old World War footage of them making dive bombs, and that's basically what we do. We kind of run them where we need to. We get in behind them, and we're making a pass, and I'm shooting 2 times, just boom, boom, and then we pull out and we have to circle around. So I have to kill them in 1 or 2 shots usually, and we're going 60, 70, 80 miles an hour and shoot, boom, boom, pull up. hopefully he's done. Most of the time he's done, I'll say that. And then if not, we have to find him again, circle around, come back on him. So it's so much more difficult. There's way more guys that can shoot out of the helicopter that can. It took us a long time to find somebody to kind of fill in behind me when I knew I was going to start transitioning out of the airplane. Like, we went through several guys to try to get in. It's just, there's not a lot of people that can do it and do it efficiently and effectively. That's the thing. There's a lot of guys that want to do it, and we threw a lot of guys in there, but it's just, and we've had guys that were, resumes full of state champion skeet shooters, or I was the best shooter on my FFA team or 4-H team, and I won state championships, and I was champion at this and that. And then you throw them in an airplane and it doesn't translate at all. Like, it's 100% different. Like, there's no training for it. You don't practice for that. It's just repetition, and a lot of times you either have it or you don't. And as far as the hunting side of things go, in the airplane, a lot of stuff that we cover in the airplane is your open. So it's mainly for coyotes, because you're in a lot more open ground where you can see them a long ways, see them, go after them, you get them, but you can't flush things really. You can't hover, you can't do anything. So it's, you're kind of at the mercy of the critter at that point. The helicopter, you can, we can manipulate things how you want to, kind of. You can fly a creek bottom and push it out, flush everything out the other end. You can get down into places that you need to get into, and it's more of the hog deal. We don't spend a whole lot of time chasing coyotes out of the helicopter, just because it's mainly just for hogs, and it's a lot more expensive to run the helicopter than it is the airplane.
So you referenced earlier that you use a shotgun. Is that the weapon you're always using, or do you use other guns?
The airplane fixed wing is strictly shotgun. Just use 12 gauge shotgun.
How close are you trying to get to that animal in a perfect world?
Close as you can. In a perfect world, always one of my favorite spots to hunt out of the airplane was up in kind of the northeast part of the state. We used to base out of Bartlesville and hunt a lot of that stuff east of Bartlesville, and even west of Bartlesville quite a bit. A lot of that open tall grass. Because you can see for miles, and especially after the springtime, everybody burns everything off, and a lot of big cattle ranches, a lot of open space. So you can see forever, and it was easy. We got our biggest numbers up there all the time. But as far as like the helicopter, we will use primarily shotguns, and a lot of it is gunner preference. Like, I'm one of the primary gunners out in the West, but every district's we got 2 or 3 guys in each district that can shoot out of they're certified to shoot out of the helicopter, and a lot of times it's just preference. We can use ARs or shotguns. I'm more of a shotgun guy. I just like AR's fun, but I've always, I guess just because I'm used to it. That's what I shot for 20 years out of the aircraft, so I just stuck with it, and if it's not broke, don't fix it. And every once in a while I'll play with the AR, but it's as far as effectiveness goes, stick to the shotgun. But now we have an AR or a shotgun that's built off an AR platform. So it's basically a AR shotgun, 10 round mags, and it's a AR platform. We can drop the clip, pop another one in, and go from there. So it's kind of merged the two together, and now we got the perfect beast.
So I'm assuming you have a favorite gun that you like to use all the time. Does it have a name?
I didn't name her. I never got too attached to them, because we burn them up so quick that we kind of cycled them out every couple of years. So I didn't want to get too attached. So we kept it strictly work related, just strictly business, and we had mutual agreement that it was going to be strictly business, knowing that we were going to part one day, so we didn't get attached.
That's cool. So now you've seen these helicopter hunts really commercialized, and a lot of people are offering guided hunts to do what you have done for a living for the last several years, which has to feel pretty cool on your end. But on the commercialized side of things, have you seen that help your cause, hurt your cause, in terms of like those folks maybe interfering with what you're trying to do and your objectives, or does it really matter?
Oh, I don't know that it really matters too much. I mean, the biggest deal is probably the one question I've got the most of in my whole career were from landowners saying or asking if they could get up in the helicopter and go. And they're like, man, do you think I can get up there and go do that? And of course, we would never allow that. We couldn't do it. And so that was always a no. So on the private side, a lot of times they'll provide the landowners that opportunity. And I don't blame a landowner for wanting to, get up there and experience that for himself. Or anybody in general wanting to get it. Because I think everybody, and I tell people that all the time, it's like one of those things you got to do before you die. You need to go get in a helicopter and go chase some stuff with it. And it's expensive, but it's one of those things everybody ought to do at least once. So I'm not mad at the private side. Like, it is what it is. And it's just like anything. If it's fun and it's enjoyable and, you kind of want to share it with everybody. And that's kind of the whole concept of it. As far as the purpose of the two, like, I think we're totally separate on that side of things. So that's where the conflict comes into play. Is we're in the eradication business, basically. A landowner calls us in because he's having a problem. We're there to remove everything we see that's on that place that we're able to. We're there to get it out. Whereas on the private side, it's maybe not so much. If you go in there and wipe out everything you see, then that costs them money. That means I got to go find another place to hunt, or they kind of want to split that up between several different guys. And this is just my opinion. Like I said, I don't know the whole ins and outs of the private side, but that's just kind of what I see. And then so that kind of. And then on the other side of it is you got people that are, literally just came off the street and wrote a check and jumped in a helicopter and they're at it. So I feel like there's probably some educating going on, on the wildlife side, on the hog side is, they educate a lot of the stuff, which sometimes may or may not make it more difficult for us, because most times than not, the landowner eventually comes back around and it's like, hey, I'm still having trouble. Can you come out? And I can almost tell when we go to a place that has been hunted before on the private side, as opposed to some place that hasn't. The hogs are just, like I said, the hogs are smart. They don't have much of a big brain, but they're very smart critters and they're very adaptable, and same with coyotes. So you can tell when they've been educated a little bit. So it might.
How so? They just stay hunkered down, or
they just figure out that if they stay under the trees and don't flush out, then they're a lot harder to kill. And you can always tell they're in a lot smaller groups. You get places where you come in on a ranch and you come across groups in 50, 60 in a group. You can tell that place hasn't been messed with very much, because those hogs are in big groups. You go to other places and there's 8 or 10 here, and then you go to another part of the ranch and there's 8 or 10 there. Like, they get split up. They basically get flushed out and split up, and sometimes they'll get back together and sometimes they won't. But the smaller groups kind of is another indicator that they've been worked on, either thermals or helicopters or something like that. You just kind of manipulate it a little bit. But
so how does it work with like property lines and airspace and stuff? Are you guys able to, I'm sure it's different, you guys, compared to like some of those private commercial outfitters who are providing these hunts, but like, do you have certain landowners that you have to stay within the confinements of their ranch boundaries, or do you kind of have free reign?
It's really no different than what the private side has, to be honest. They have to, they have parameters, or landowners that they have to stay on just like we do, and it's no different. We don't have any kind of free reign or anything like that, just because we're part of the federal government. It's just we have landowners, and they have to sign an agreement form basically giving us permission to work their property, and we have a lot of them. Like, there's a good portion of the state throughout the years that we've worked on, somebody's worked on, so we have a lot of property signed up, but we have to stay within property boundaries. This guy right here wants everything gone, all the hogs removed off of his place, but you might have a fence line separating him from another guy that's outfitting hunts, selling hunts. So he doesn't want anything touched, and it gets, so we are very strict as far as property boundaries go. You don't want to fudge those boundaries and get in on somebody, because then it's just you're just asking for trouble. So we definitely have to stay within boundaries, and that's why, I think, in my opinion, for the most part, we'll never really get a grasp. We can help individuals and individual farmers and ranchers, with their isolated problems, but as far as getting a grasp on the whole population in general, it'll in my opinion never happen, because you got one guy on one fence that wants them, a guy on the other side of the fence wants them gone, and it's that way all the way across the state or across the country, really. So it's as long as you have that, you're never going to really get a hold of them.
Wow. So I'm curious, have you ever had a scenario where you were hunting a big group of hogs or something and then pushed them on to a neighbor's by accident? You just ran out of room, couldn't get them killed, and then the neighbor was mad because now you've essentially pushed all these hogs onto his ranch?
No, I've never had that situation. I'm sure it's happened. In fact, I know, you run hogs onto neighbors and unintentionally, but we've never had them call and were mad and actually just blamed us for, putting hogs on them. It was never like that. But, it's always the other side of it where, the neighbor's mad because we killed all these hogs, and he had plans for, to sell hunts, and the hogs don't know the boundaries. They'll go wherever they please, unless it's a really good high fence or something they can't get out of. But if it's just, normal barbed wire fence, they go where they want. And this guy over here may have planned a 6-man hog hunt for the weekend and charged a lot of money and had some guys coming in. Well, and the neighbor on the other side is getting his wheat field tore up, so he calls us in, and we happen to go out there, catch them on the wheat, even though the same group of hogs, but we wiped them out in a place that we were allowed to wipe them out on, and it hurt the other guy. And then we'll get a call and be like, yeah, you all killed all the hog. Well, we didn't do anything wrong. It just happened to work out the way it did. But we never the other way around. It's always we get in trouble for killing hogs that more than we get in trouble for not. So,
man, interesting. Yeah, it's crazy to me, and I want you to help put it in perspective for those listening, because there are those animal rights activists, and then even there may be a handful of hunters listening where they're like, man, that just sounds kind of cruel, like just flying over and mowing down as many of these animals as you can. But can you provide some context as to how big of a problem it really is, and how quickly these animals reproduce, and the damage they can do to a field, or in the coyotes' case, calves and so on and so forth?
Yeah, it's like I said, we're in a time right now. We'll start with the coyotes. We're in a time right now where cattle are as high as they've been in a long time, So, you get a calf that gets killed, and that's $1,200 you just took out of that farmer's pocket, and or that rancher's pocket. So it's a big deal to him, and that is a big deal. I'm not going to minimize that, but in most cases on the ranching side, a farmer might lose 1 to 2 or 3, and then we can get the problem stopped. So it cost them a few $1,000 on the high end. Hopefully we can get it stopped before it gets any worse. But to put it into context, you get a group of hogs on a corn patch or something, or a wheat or milo or something like that, and they just go to work on it. And we've had cases where farmers have had to go back and basically reseed a whole 320 or 160 acre corn patch, just 100% from beginning to end, to redo the whole thing again. So you just doubled his overhead right off the bat. And then, so the bottom line effect, is drastically higher for hogs. There's nothing that accounts for more damage in this state for sure. And, Texas obviously is the other state, but, if there's hogs around, there's no animal that's going to cost a rancher or farmer more money than what a hog will, and it's it's in the millions and millions of dollars. It's pretty hard to fathom what there's some times where when we're not in such a good year on wheat prices or corn prices and something like that, where it's a crippling to some guys. If it's you get a group of hogs in there that just goes and mows down your field that you just worked on. I mean, that's a crippling deal for some people, and it's so it's. And then the other thing, like you were talking about with the animal rights stuff, and it is a touchy subject, but it just seems like the hogs just don't, they don't get the support as much as what other, and it's understandable. Like I said, they're a non-native species. Most of your protective rights groups or animal rights groups are, they're aimed towards your cuddly furry animals and your native species. But hogs, it's just, they're kind of hated across the board, and nobody really cares what you do to them. But like,
do you know how they came about?
Yeah, originally they're from, I mean, they came across with the first European settlers. That's what they brought. When they were first exploring the continent, they brought feral swine or not feral, they were domestic at the time, but they brought pigs and goats and stuff. That's what they were going to eat. That's what they were going to survive on. So they came on the ships with your first settlers, and then eventually, it's hard to believe, but eventually over time, they'd lose a few here and there as they were, traversing through the continent, and that's literally where it started from. I mean, initially, historically, realistically, the widespread, and this is strictly my opinion on it, in the last 20 years, realistically, I think that the widespread growth of it is just from people moving them, catching them and transplanting them. And, at the time, people thought it was a great idea to move a group of hogs from here to a place where there wasn't hogs so we can hunt them, and, without even thinking about what they were doing, And so that happened a bunch. I remember when I first started, it was like that everywhere. Somebody would catch a group of hogs here and transport them to the next county and turn them out on their ranch. They had this huge 600-acre ranch, thinking a group of hogs was going to stay on that 600 acres, and they don't care if you don't have what they're going to go where they want. And eventually, and back to, how they reproduce. I mean, you're talking exponential growth on the hogs. That's why we'll never get a grasp on them, in my opinion, unless something comes along where we can sterilize or some sort of poison, something like that, where you can do a little, some sort of a specific swine-specific poison or something. But I mean, you're talking a group of, and these are in Oklahoma numbers. I think they vary throughout the country, but you might get a sow here that will, the younger sows obviously are going to be just a few hogs in a litter, and your older, sows will 8 to 10, sometimes a little more than that, but on average, let's just say 8 to 10 hogs per sow, and twice a year. So you're figuring each sow 20, and then all the females in that in one litter in 6 months, they're ready to have their first litter. So you're talking, exponential growth where, one single pig can be responsible for, 100 hogs in a year, and you multiply that. I mean, I think we're well over 1 million now in the state. It's a hard number to even guesstimate, but I think we're anywhere from 800 to 1 million hogs probably in the state, and it's just no signs of slowing down just because of that. I mean, you got to be killing a vast majority of the population just to keep it flat, and we just can't hardly ever get to that number.
How big of an effect do you think hogs are having on turkey populations, specifically in Oklahoma? I know there's people listening from other states where this isn't going to be relevant, but I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
I think where they overlap, I think they're, I think they play a part. I mean, I don't think they seek out turkey nests by any means, but if they stumble across a nest, hogs they're not real specific on what they eat, So if you get a sounder of hogs that stumble across a turkey nest out in the middle of a pasture or something, or the edge of a wheat field, you can consider it gone. As far as how big of an overall effect, I don't know. I mean, I know we've had down turkey numbers over the last few years, and you get a lot of people saying it's because the hog population is going up. Well, the turkey populations are declining in places that there's no hogs. So that's not totally relevant. Or
That's
totally
a good point,
true.
though.
You know, I mean, it was across the board. We had hogs up in the turkey populations in the far northwest part of the state where we don't have hardly any hogs. Hogs weren't accounting for any of that, and they were on the decline too, pretty drastic decline. You know, in the peak of it, and so I think it's just, like I said, this is totally opinion, but I just think it's a variety of different things that were hitting the turkeys all at the same time, and I don't know that it was just one thing that anybody ever pinpointed. And I know they've done the game department's done some studies, and I don't think it was ever, nailed down to one specific cause. I think, but go back to answer your question. I think if there's hogs around and there's turkeys around and they come across, yeah, they're going to help themselves to some eggs, but they're not. I don't think they seek it out, so I don't think it's a huge problem, but it doesn't help.
Gotcha. I want to shift gears here a little bit. You talked about how this job is very fulfilling, and you've really enjoyed it over the years, but at some point you had this itch to get into real estate. And we met, about 2 years ago now, and you were already in the business at that time, and we can get into, your transition and why you decided to make the jump to a different company. But I'm more interested in talking about what caused you to want to get into real estate to begin with. And, you were doing something that you loved and you enjoyed, but there was some other nudge telling you to do something else.
Yeah.
So talk to us about that.
It kind of goes way back for me. It honestly started because I've had my license for quite a while. I've had my license for like 12 years probably. But it initially started when back to the very beginning, I moved to Oklahoma, bought a house, and it came down when we were moving, I had already met my wife and we were moving out to the country. I put my house on the market for sale, and a local real estate agent there sold it, and we sold it pretty quick, and everything went pretty good, and that kind of like sparked it a little bit. And then I had a friend at the time that was buying and selling real estate. He'd buy a farm and kind of fix it up, and he didn't sell very much, but he was buying up a bunch. And so I would kind of, we got to talking about that quite a bit. So that kind of added a little bit to it. And pretty soon I had an interest in it and had done enough research, and I thought, I'm going to get my license. So I got my license, like I said, 12 years ago or something, and just had it and just dabbled, just your typical kind of had it in my back pocket, and I dabbled, and I never let it lapse. Like it's never, maybe for a short period of time, like a month or two, but where I just missed the deadline. But I always kept it up, and I always, kept all my CEs going and did all the stuff I needed to, but I just never really dove off into it until recently. And I don't know, man. Like I said, it's I did some transactions, and most of them were residential at the very beginning, and I had the itch. That's why I got my real estate license, but the residential part of it wasn't scratching that itch, So it was like, I know I like this. I know I'm interested in real estate, or else I wouldn't have got into it. And it was always kind of pulling at me, but I didn't find exactly what was scratching it. And then slowly, your rural real estate started catching some steam, and it started to become more of a specialized niche instead of just an overall broad real estate. It started kind of getting your specialties, and it was getting a lot of the farm and ranch and recreational stuff. And I knew that's kind of where I wanted to start going to, but like I said, I was just dabbling this whole time. And then like I said, we got together a couple years ago. And just before that, it was the same year, because I think we met in 22, and it was earlier that same year. It was when my mom was sick with cancer, and I was spending a lot of time in New Mexico with her, and a lot of that time was just spent being with her, just like hanging out. She was bedridden. We couldn't really do much, but we were just hanging out. So we would talk a lot, and then I was on the computer a lot and stuff like that, and that kind of just relit the fire a little bit. I was like, man, I'm kind of tired of just, not doing anything with it. I'm interested. I really want to do it, so I'm going to do it. So I started doing it a little more. I was with another brokerage at the time, and I started, trying to commit to it a little more. I just didn't have the backing. I just didn't have the help. The guy was a nice guy, like I said, but I just didn't have the support or the backing, the nudge that I needed to go further. And like I said, and it was all during that same time when I had a lot going on with my mom and everybody, and it was, I just knew it was time. That whole situation with my mom, I got to where I was like, you know what, can't keep putting these off. There's something you want to do, something you're passionate about, something you want to really get into. You got to do it. Like tomorrow's may not be there, so quit waiting for tomorrow or whatever it is and just do it. So just a weird deal. Like I think it was just normally just scrolling through Facebook or Instagram or something, and the Arrowhead, y'all were like jamming everybody's stuff up with Arrowhead posts, and I saw it one day and I was like, don't ask me what, don't ask me why. I mean, you had all kinds of already established land brokerages, and I had local guys that I knew there locally that kept trying to get me to come on and work just on their land division, and for whatever reason, I think I shot you a DM or Will or whichever. I don't remember who, both y'all maybe, I don't know. And that's kind of just how it started, and then it just kind of, like I said, just kind of lit the fire again, and it's a difference between having that nudge and that little bit of support and backing that made the difference. Because, like I said, I was wanting to commit to it at the time a little more, but I just didn't have the brokerage I was with at the time just didn't have the resources to kind of help me progress or scale a little bit, and that's what I found when I came here, is that it was like y'all were laying the groundwork to support the agent and help the agent scale their own individual businesses by providing the resources that you do, behind the scenes, and that's kind of what I needed, and it's shown, it's
Yeah, it's so important, man. I mean, there's a huge turnover rate in the real estate industry, meaning folks who get licensed, take a stab at it, and then they don't make it. And I really feel like that is largely because of the level of support that's there. Mm-hmm. And if you're one of the unlucky ones and you start out with a brokerage that doesn't really offer much aside from maybe some office space or maybe a pat on the back and some moral support, I mean, it's just hard to get going. And it's a competitive industry. There's more and more people getting into it. And sometimes, the number of people getting into it is dependent upon our economy's well-being at the time. Mm-hmm. You look back a couple years ago during the heart of COVID, or 3 and 4 years ago, even when it was just taking off, and our economy was in a pretty good place prior to that, and COVID drove everything crazy, and real estate especially. And then I've said it before, y'all have heard me say it, all you had to have was a pulse and a real estate license if you wanted to hop in and dabble, and now we're getting back into a more stable market, I would say. And if the support's not there, you're probably having a hard time. Mm-hmm. And it's so important. So that being said, that being the biggest difference maker for you, you've been able to scale your business quite a bit, in my opinion, significantly from when we first started talking to you. Now you've got a new dilemma, right? Where you're looking at, gosh, if I could do this full time, I could light the world on fire, but also like I've got this other job that I also enjoy, and it also helps pay the bills, maybe a little bit of stability, a little bit of security. I think there's a lot of people listening that can probably resonate with this, where they're doing something else. They've got their real estate license. Maybe they've got some positive momentum in the real estate business, but they're trying to figure out when to make that jump and if to make that, if they should make that jump. Tell us about just your mental state and the things you think about, and as it relates to just going full time and leaving behind a career that you love and have enjoyed and it's been great for you versus not doing that.
Yeah, and I've thought about it a ton. Here recently, especially just since our sales meeting and stuff. I think about it a lot. I think honestly, and if I'm being 100% honest, I think my situation is a little bit different than maybe somebody else that's in a similar position because, just let's say, a sales manager, you're working in some other field, or a firefighter, a police officer or whatever. If you're in that field and you're kind of dabbling back and forth, there's definitely that pull. You're in two completely different realms, two different worlds, and they don't really intersect very much. And, obviously, if I could spend more time doing this, it would be, obviously better for the business. But in my situation, I think it's just a little bit different. And I think the reason being is because, to me, both of my careers, they overlap constantly. So they're, I do a good job of keeping them separate. I mean, I don't want to create any kind of conflicts of interest or anything, but at the same time, being a wildlife biologist, as my other career, and the people that I come into contact with and the people that I'm working for on that side of things, the farmers, the ranchers, I've helped people set up their farms before for hunting, just using some of my experience and background for that. So the people that I'm coming into contact with on that side of things from my other career, my initial career, are exactly the people that I'm doing business with on the other on the real estate side. The two worlds mesh so good, and in my opinion, I'm not arguing the fact that if I was strictly doing real estate and 100% doing the rural real estate, that there would be obviously if you're doing one thing and one thing only, it's only gonna help scale that particular business. But on the other hand, I think a lot of especially in the last couple of years, a lot of the business that I'm doing, on the real estate side has been in direct correlation with the relationships that I've built on the other side, So maybe I didn't make this sale or get this listing if I wasn't doing what I was doing in the first place. Maybe I would have, maybe I would have sent them a piece of mail or something, and it would have lit up a call. But I have built so many relationships on that side of things, and relationships with the same people and the right people that I'm currently doing business with on the real estate side, that maybe that my situation's a little bit different. And don't get me wrong, I still think about it nonstop as far as, when's that right time, and should I or shouldn't I, go full time, and this and that. And that's the other thing too, is like, define full time. Is it 40 hours? Is it 20 hours, 60 hours? I spend a lot of time on real estate. My wife can justify too. Like to me, that's the bigger pool, is not so much of, I feel like if I could dedicate more time to real estate, I would obviously do better. It's because I dedicate a ton of time. It's a full-time job for most. It's full-time hours for most people, just on the real estate side. And I think the biggest pool is obviously it makes for long days when you're doing a certain amount of hours on this plus a full-time hours on this. That totals out to 12, 14-hour days sometimes. And that's the biggest deal, as far as maybe giving up one or the other. But it's hard to justify doing it when they both marry so good to each other, And that's probably what's kept me doing it as long as I have. And I don't know that, we'll see how it goes. But it's just like I said, I build so much relationships with farmers and ranchers on that side that they, genuine relationships where they feel comfortable with me. And then whenever they decide that they want to sell something, like I said, I've always done a good job of keeping things separate. I don't discuss real estate with them when I'm there helping them with a hog problem or something, or vice versa. But we become friends, and through friendly conversations, they figure out that I do that, and that's part of the deal is that we, then they'll call me if they decide that, something comes up. Hey, I got to sell that 160. Remember that 160 you trapped those hogs off of? Well, I decided I want to sell that. And then they feel comfortable with me. I've already got a relationship with them, so I get the listing and I help them sell that property. And so I've done a lot of business that way. And so I think they go together really well. I mean, it probably sounds like a big old excuse to you, but it's that's how I justify it in my mind. And like I said, things will be different. And I don't know, man. It's I think, and talking with some of the other guys, Clay Brook and some of the other guys that have dealt with the same issues, it always comes back to, you'll know when the time is right. Like you'll know, like in each one of their situations, they had a specific moment that they can pinpoint pretty much and say, this was the moment that I knew. I haven't had that moment yet. Like I'm still, when that moment comes, I'm sure I'll know, and I'll know what the right decision is. But at the moment, in the time being right now, like I said, it's to me, they're both, they're piggybacking off of each other really good right now, and it's I kind of just want to ride it out and see how it goes,
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot of people listening who are like, well, that's easy for him to say, but I mean, I think there is some validity to, is your other job, is it feeding you opportunities for your real estate business, and typically the answer is yes or no. Mm-hmm. And yeah, you may grab one or two, but I mean, if you're working as a stockbroker, I don't know how often you're interacting with landowners. You know what I mean? I mean, and that's maybe a bad example, but I think you have to ask yourself, okay, is this yielding me other opportunities or is it not? And that's the thing that a lot of people don't do. And in your case, I will give you some grace. I think that it does help feed your real estate business and vice versa. So I think that's a good thing. And as a business owner, as an owner of a real estate brokerage, it's easy for me to sometimes be like, well, dang it, Josh, we need you full time, man. But like at the same time, it's not that black and white. And I think that's what's cool about our brokerage and our culture is that we do have grace in scenarios like that. And, it does have to be the right timing for you and your family. But at the same time, we're also running a business and we're also looking to be profitable and we're also looking to help you grow. And if you're not growing, then that's a problem, mm-hmm. right? For you and for us. And so I think it's worth talking about. And I know there's a lot of people who battle that same decision. I've seen it in several years of working with a lot of agents across the country. But I will say the folks who never let go and they try to juggle both, their success in their real estate career, they never make it to where they want to be in their minds. And that's different for everybody, but I think it is worth mentioning that if you feel stagnant in your real estate business or you're not at the level you want to be, it's a very simple equation. If you're spending, even if you are spending 40 to 60 hours a week on real estate and you're still spending 30 to 40 on some other career endeavor, mm-hmm. that's still 30 to 40 hours that you're not spending on real estate, right? Oh, yeah. And so it's been probably the hottest conversation in my real estate career as I've worked with agents across the country, and it's a good one. But I think it goes without saying, what you said earlier is very correct. You'll know when the time is right, through prayer and through just faith. God will lead you in the right direction,
Yeah, no, and I'd lean on that a lot. I'd lean on, and trust me, I've prayed, and I'm sure my wife's prayed on it a bunch of times because we've started having those conversations, and that's the other thing too is when it's not just when you marry up, it's a team, man. And so we have those conversations together and talk about it. And obviously, just in our relationship, I'm okay with the risks and taking risks. She's very conservative. She's like, I don't know if we should do this. And I'm more of like, hey, just grab my hand, let's jump, let's see what happens. And so we have that tug and pull all the time and pray on it. And it's like I said, I trust in, that he's going to provide the answer. And at that, up till this point, it just seems like everything has been pointing towards just keep doing what you're doing right now. Just keep doing what you're doing. And like I said, I'm sure the time will come. And like I keep going back to it, but even talking to Claybrook's one of the scenarios that I look at a lot of times. And we had a long conversation about it for our sales meeting. And his situation was kind of the same thing. He said, man, I battled and battled and battled, and then pretty much the good Lord made the decision for me, and I'm trusting in it, man. I'm trusting that the good Lord's going to make that decision for me, because I don't want to have to make it myself, because like I said, man, it's tough. It's not like it's you said it earlier. It's two things that I love, and I've loved my career for 20 years now, or 19 years now, and don't regret a single day. And like I told you earlier, also never looked back and thought, damn, I don't want to get up and go do this today. Never had that feeling with my other job. And now it's just like the whole fire for the real estate, especially, the rural real estate. That's my thing. Like, I don't want to do residential, and I won't do residential. Like, I'm doing what I want to do, and that fire is growing, that it's getting hotter and hotter. And that's that part of, my passion for that is getting more and more, so I'm sure there'll come a time. But like I said, I think the right now everything's kind of pointing just to keep riding the wave and ride it. And when I think you're right, as far as it's going to come to a point where things kind of plateau out a little bit. And as far as what my capacity or capabilities are while juggling both careers, I'm going to eventually hit that point where, okay, this is my max that I can do while I'm still doing this other thing. And then at that point, that's where the crossroads going to have to come. And do I want to scale more than this, or am I okay with just doing this? It's just, like I said, we'll cross that bridge, I feel like, pretty soon. But
yeah.
For the time being, I think it's, like I said, we'll ride the wave, and as things are still going good and things are growing, because I feel like things are growing, like, what I mean, they're picking up steam, and my career's starting to, I think, barely starting to take off, like on the real estate side. Like, it's just getting going. I haven't dedicated, this is the first 2 years that I've ever really dedicated a significant amount of time and money into myself as a business, and it's showed, and I'm going to continue to do that until it comes time to, or get off the pot.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, man, I want to close this out here. This is the Tied to the Land podcast, and of course, everything we've talked about today has been tied to the land in some way, shape, or form. But I'm curious, is there a pivotal moment in your life that you can recall where you were drawn to the land or drawn to the outdoors? Is there somebody that introduced you to the land, or maybe a certain hunt or a certain memory that sticks out in your mind where you were like, this is going to be my life? Like, yeah, I love this. This is what the rest of my life is going to be shaped around.
Yeah. There's not a hunt in particular or anything like that. I mean, for me, it was, I mean, I grew up in the mountains and in a very rural setting there too, in the mountains of kind of south central New Mexico. We had elk and deer and blinds and bears and all that stuff. And I I remember I started hunting at a young age, and it was probably my uncles. I tagged along with a few, mule deer hunts or elk hunts as, probably a 9, 10-year-old, tagging along with them. And then that kind of lit the fire on the hunting side of things. I was always the outdoorsy kid anyway, to begin with from the jump. I got an older brother and 2 younger sisters. My older brother's, he kind of take it or leave it. He's it's not really his thing, the hunting side. I was always the one from day one, always outside doing stuff like that, and took a liking to the hunting deal. But I think if it was one person, it was probably my granddad, my grandpa. We have a little 80-acre place up there in the Capitan Mountains there, kind of in south central New Mexico. It's actually home of Smokey the Bear, if you ever look up Capitan Mountains, Billy the Kid, all that good stuff. We have a little 80-acre farm there, and I remember as a young kid, he was taking me there all the time. We always went and hung out there, and he was already older. And see, I don't know my dad. I don't even know his name. Like, my mom raised me, my brother, and 2 sisters by herself. Well, my grandparents helped, and we had we're a very close, tight family, so we had a lot of help. But she raised all of us by herself. So he was the male figure in my life, and so he was always dragging me out there. If it was just something as simple as just going to go for a ride, we always went out there, and that's where I took a liking to the land and did that. And I'll tell you where it kind of came full circle is when I graduated high school. I was all about money. Like, I knew I wanted to go to college. I wanted to be the first in my family to get a degree and all that stuff. And I started out, like, I was big into sports, basketball, and so sports medicine was my first thing. It's like, yeah, they make a lot of money. I'm going to do that. And then it was like, damn, I got to go to school for a long time. So I was like, no, got to do something else. So I went to like business management. I started that and just didn't like it. I was like, man, this is not, I didn't want to do, what my idea of business management was at the time was never being outside and being behind a desk. And I was like 2 years in already into college, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to do something I love. And then, the whole wildlife science deal came in, and I knew, I was thinking money. And at the time, and then I finally just hit me like, do something you love. And that's what it was. So that's why I went and got a degree in wildlife science. And so that's kind of where it started. Was, like I said, my granddad, grandpa just took me out there and had me out there, and my brother too. And he always had us out there. But man, I was going on hunts by myself in the mountains at 12 years old. I would leave, throw a backpack on, throw some potted meat and, a few things in a backpack, and I could walk from our back door and be up on the mountains in, 30 minutes, just take off walking from the house and be hunting lions and bears and elk and deer. And that's what I did. And I just always had it in me. It was just always there. I'd always had that connection to the land and wanting to be on it and wanting to be out in it, and it just never went away, and even now, like I said, I got a career doing it where I could be out in it all the time, and I've been doing it for 20 years, and I'm still looking for ways to continue to be out on it and in it, and that, that's why the land real estate, that's why it's got such a big grasp on me now, is because it's another way to be out on it and in it, and tied to it. That's kind of why I'm doing it, because and loving it and passionate about it. And I feel like that's why things are going good, is because it's an honest profession where if you're genuine and honest and have a true love for it, it kind of pays you back naturally, just by being that way. And that's kind of what I just feel. I feel natural doing it. It feels just like I do shooting out of an airplane. It feels natural to me. I can't explain it. I can't hardly teach it. They've tried to get me to teach it for a long time. It's hard to teach because it just comes naturally. It feels good. It feels right. And I've just done it. And it feels that way with, even though like I said, I've had my license for a long time, but I'm still barely now diving into the real estate, because I found that niche that I like, and it's the land. and it just feels natural. So it comes easy, and I think it feels good, and so it's kind of anything that has to do with the land and being out in it and on it is kind of draws me in, and it feels right. So
yeah, it's awesome, man. Well, guys, this is the Tied to the Land podcast. My name's Andrew Schultz. This is Josh Candelaria. Josh, thanks for joining us today.
Man, it's been great. I appreciate
awesome.
it.
I hope you all learned something today, and we'll see you next time.